Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast. Today we have a good friend of the show and a good friend of ours, guy who's educated us all, Doug Reynolds from LowCarbUSA, and you have a lot of good stuff for us to reflect on. Some good things are happening, so we really wanted to share it with everyone. So Doug, give us your spiel of what you got going on, man.
Hey Brian, Tro, thanks for having me, man. So basically in LowCarbUSA, we had this concept of a professional environment for doctors and health professionals and we really felt like that was a necessary thing. But it never really took off. It just wasn't the right place for it. And I actually saw Tro chirping about it on Twitter, saying we need a professional organization. And I wrote to him and I said, well, dude, like we've already got this, but it's not the right place. We need to figure out how to make it legit and how to actually make it where people are going to want to be a part of it. And so we thrashed around a bit and eventually decided that what we really needed was a proper non-profit that existed solely for the purpose of providing an environment for people that are open to the conversation of carbohydrate reduction as a therapeutic intervention, basically, and that they don't even have to be doing it; they just may be interested in it. But this is a place for everyone to come and be a part of and learn. So we decided to pull the trigger, and I established a new nonprofit now called the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, which has become fondly known as the SMHP, with exactly that in mind. And we really excited about it right now because I've been bragging about it for a while and never actually coming up with the goods because we've had some technical issues and stuff, but we're really, really close now to being able to actually launch this thing. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be stunning. It's going to be, I did a talk with a podcast interview with Adele Height the other day, and she's been a huge part in making this thing happen as well. And she was talking about, she was throwing out phrases like, this is going to be a game changer in this community and everything. So, it's providing education for the doctors and practitioners that want to learn more. We're providing an accreditation, a bunch of accreditation pathways where providers or practitioners can actually become accredited, have that badge that says accredited next to their profile, and actually use the credentials MHP, which I think is a huge deal. And something that I had been missing in a lot of what we were doing in LowCarbUSA and a lot of the conversations we were having around actually getting this organization off the ground. What was I saying about this?
It's gonna be great, Doug.
Yeah, no, yeah, sorry, I forgot about it. Hopefully we can cut this piece out, but it's not essential. But it's about education. People kept talking about education, and I said, we've got a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of education already. Yes, we can build on it, but to start with, we've got pretty much what we want. But what they made me aware of during all these conversations was that what we really need is education for the non-believer, for the skeptic. And so that's going to be something that we're really going to focus on up front. Like, we get in there, you don't have to be a member, you don't have to do anything, but there'll be a bunch of content that we're going to build on that we can actually, the attempt is to reach the skeptic and hopefully bring more people into the fold. And I think that's been something that's been missing from a lot of the content I've put out, and a lot of people have put out. They're all preaching to the converted, right? Teaching the converted more, but it has not a lot of content out there trying to teach people about why they actually should be considering this as in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical point. I think this whole thing with COVID has really brought metabolic health to the forefront for us frontline docs. We see people who are metabolically sick are the ones dying. And so I think as physicians, we have a responsibility at least to know about it. You may not condone it, you may not agree with us, you may not understand it all, but I think you owe it to your patients to have some background to say, okay, here's why I support it, or here's why I don't, and have some kind of data points, right? And I think that's the problem, is if we're preaching to the choir all the time, we're just recycling and hearing what we want to hear and having an echo chamber. But I think it's really important to have outside people come in and say, okay, let me question these things. Here are my concerns, and that we have to address those concerns just like we do with our patients.
I think one of the most interesting things and I'm happy to be a part of this, part of the board of directors with so many of my mentors and Doug, you and Eric Westman and Miriam Kalmian and also
Rob Sivis.
Rob Sivis. It's these people. Ultimately, we need to have a healthcare practitioner organization just like the ADA, and it has to be not for profit, and we have to make it so we're a service to people, where they're able to get quality education from the Noakes Foundation, from Diet Doctor, curated CME, and somebody who's guiding them along this process. And ultimately, even maybe even potentially soon, we'll roll out the fellowship opportunity where they could spend time in my clinic, Dr. Eric Westman's clinic, in Brian's clinic, and help these students and residents and dietitians see what it is that happens, but ultimately creating a certification process and knowledge base. I mean, this is what I would have wished I had. I would have wished I had this 7 years ago, and it's going to be an incredibly valuable service. And it's somewhere where we can, donate our money to and our membership to, in an effort to advance the research that's needed to support this field and advance the education that's needed. It can't just be you and Pam at LowCarbUSA. It's got to be you guys have done it, but it's got to be everybody. And I think this is the way to do it. I'm so excited about this. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about doing it on your own, and you're right. I mean, apart from a few helpers at the actual events, we literally have done this whole thing ourselves up until now. But when I started forming this thing and talking about it to a few people, Adele Haidt, who's been very involved in us developing the clinical guidelines and stuff, she's climbed on board with Cecile Seth. And I mean, the idea with the society was that eventually at some point we were going to have a bunch of different committees that would focus on different aspects of the work that we're trying to do. But because I'm always in this mindset of doing it all on my own, it's like, okay, that's a couple of years down the road, right? That we will eventually make that happen. And now suddenly it's been taken out of my hands. These people are just like rocking it. And Cecile is basically heading up like the steering committee, which oversees all the existence and the establishment of all the other committees. And, suddenly as we launch now, we've got a bunch of them that are already established, a bunch of other ones that are busy being established. And so I feel like being able to relinquish some of the responsibility to get other people to do it is something that I've had to learn how to do. But it's going to move this thing forward so much quicker and so much more effectively. We've got an education committee, which you've asked to be a part of, which is one of the main mandates is to look at the education that I was talking about earlier, to actually try to reach the skeptic, reach the non-believer and the naive. There's a lot of people that just, I'm not sure how, but they haven't even heard about it. And others that stick their heads in the sand, and others that blatantly just refuse to believe. And we need to come up with strategies and content that that reaches those people, so that everybody can, at least, as Brian said, can at least take it on board as an option, as something that they need to consider, and at least be open if their patient comes to them and says they want to do this, that they don't chase them away and say, no, you're gonna kill yourself, you don't do that, or I'm firing you as my patient, or whatever. So
yeah, I think the most important thing here is how to, and, you know, and we don't have to reinvent everything. It's all like Low Carb USA is already doing those conferences that, you know, we have people in Denver every year putting on this amazing conference with great curated CME. So how can, you know, low carb, you know, certainly the Noakes Foundation has put together an amazing education resource. Diet Doctor has put together great CME. So if we can curate this whole process and create, and we've basically outlined a certification path, you know, using continuing medical education and a certified program of things that, you know, basic knowledge and basic programs that a physician or a dietitian or a personal trainer that they would need to do to be competent. I mean, this is it. And a lot of this is going to be circled around the work you've already done in Low Carb USA. You know, taking the guidelines that you worked on and that Adele has worked on, and making this, you know, a linchpin and a keystone of this organization. I mean, this is the way. And then I've talked to Brian, you know, about, you know, opening our doors for a 2-month fellowship track. Where, you know, a medical student or a resident or a fellow can come and spend, you know, 2 months in our clinics, and, you know, maybe 2 days a week, think about, you know, spend some time in the clinic, and then 2 days a week, go review curriculum and contribute to research in order to become competent in metabolic health and lifestyle medicine. And so these opportunities I wish I had 7 years ago. And now we're taking the work, amazing work you've done, and just, you know, making it that much better, and we're making it a community effort. And we have to thank, you know, all the people who've really donated to make this happen too. You know, there's a lot of great people who've really started this. So you know, it's amazing work.
yeah, thanks. What you were just mentioning something like a minute ago that so the fellowships, it's one of the defined pathways, but no actual fellowship programs exist right now in this field. So right at the bottom of that particular one, it says, like, basically we're busy developing those fellowship programs as we speak. And that check back here, and as soon as they become available, we'll give you links to be able to go and join that. So now we're talking about you and Brian, possibly Eric Westman, most likely will introduce one. Rob Cyrus will probably do one as well. But, you know, I think maybe, you know, this is an opportunity to say, like, if you are in an established practice that practices this form of lifestyle medicine, that maybe you could consider introducing a fellowship in your practice as well. And you know, we'll come up with a set of guidelines for what that fellowship needs to look like, and people can do that. And that's a way for people to contribute and become a part of this. I think on all our committee pages and everything, there's places for people to come and volunteer their time to come and help, you know, strategize about education, to talk about ideas about how to get funding, about the clinicians one. There's so many people that now Adele's so excited because we developed the generic clinical guidelines, which is now going to have a real home in the society. But her aim all along was to then build that out and start building on addenda for all the different conditions specific issues, you know. So we're talking about cancer or cardiovascular disease, type 1 or type 2 diabetes, PCOS, all the different neurological issues and mental conditions that this is so good for addressing. But and Chris Palmer will be the first one to tell you that you can't just tell a guy, give him the generic, he's paranoid schizophrenic or something. You can't just go and give him a generic diet, and because it can actually cause huge problems if it's not carefully monitored and done right. And so that needs to be documented now. It's not documented at the moment. And that's what Adele really wants to do now, is start finding volunteers from all these different areas who can come and help her build out these different condition specific areas, which is going to be, it's just going to be, I don't know, this, when it started, when we just did the generic one, I thought it was just an unbelievable achievement from Adele's perspective, that she even got that done in 9 months while she was defending her PhD. It's just astounding. And so, now with an army of volunteers to help her to build this out, I think this is going to turn into an enormously valuable document. And I mean, it's already translated into 6 different languages. I think a new one, Italian, was never available on LowCarbUSA. When we launch with the SMHP, the Italian version will be ready, will be there. We're hoping to have a Malay translation by the end of November, and possibly an Indonesian one hopefully by the end of the year. There's been promises of Dutch ones and a couple of other from European countries, but I think it's just astounding that how far this effort that we did put together, how far it's reached.
Brian, imagine a world where we just started practicing and this was available. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, and I think the big thing is having nutritionists and health coaches and people who are on the same page, who understand it, who've gone through training, so that we know we're giving the same message. I think the most frustrating thing for a patient is to get mixed messages wherever they go. Like, they're seeing their sugars get better, then the cardiologist says, oh my gosh, you're going to die because your LDL went up a little bit, but they don't look at the whole picture. But I think when people can step back and look at the whole big picture, we can really help a lot of people. And especially when we can make it culturally sensitive, right? To be able to apply this in Guatemala and apply it in El Salvador or wherever, wherever in the world, to say, okay, here's how we're in South Africa, they have a huge problem. So I think, when we have practitioners who understand that and try to make it cost effective for people, and just making it possible for everyone to be educated on the same platform and to have a standard of care, right? That's what's important, because everyone can't be doing crazy stuff. And, we hear a lot on Twitter, or, on social media, where people are saying, well, if you do this, then you're not keto, or you're not, and there's a lot of, we have to do what works for the patient. I think that's a big, huge part of this too. And, people like Dr. Unwin contributing and helping out with hope, and how do you really support that patient? Problem is, medicine's got to change. With Tro and I have the advantage of being in direct primary care, where we can spend an hour with the patient, or 45 minutes, or where we can really, really do education. But we really need to hand that off to other people who can do the follow-up work and help get them squared away. So this is a huge step in that direction of building a network of people who understand metabolic disease.
And I think the biggest thing here is, we're going to rely on the amazing continuing medical education as a part of the certification process, the amazing people at Nutrition Networks and their ethics module, and their amazing CMEs that, Brian, you were even a part of, and the amazing CMEs that we worked with Diet Doctor to get set up. We're going to take these great CMEs that are already there and make them a part of the certification process, along with obesity medicine, diabetes, these requirements to get certified. So I think this is just going to be amazing, and it's really taking in all the best groups and putting them into one package to define a very clear accreditation. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be excellent.
Yeah, and Brian, you mentioned the standard of care. I mean, that was when Adele and I first started talking about this, and she gave me her vision about where she wanted this to go, and it was it was all about establishing standard of care, an alternative standard of care for people that don't eat carbs, right? And you know, she was lucky enough to be on the jury of a malpractice trial, and the judge explained to them what standard of care meant. And it's not a document. It's like these clinical guidelines that we've got. That is not standard of care. That's just a clinical guidelines document. It's not about what you doctors get taught at college. It's not about what some professional organization teaches. It's about what you guys in practice with similar training in a similar environment, what you have as a consensus as to what is the right way to do something. That is standard of care. And it's established over time. Now we're hoping to speed up that whole process, right? Because the current standard of care has developed over many hundreds of years now. So we obviously can't wait that long. But the clinical guidelines document is a great point to start. And in the official legal definition of standard of care, it literally specifies that a set of clinical guidelines is not standard of care, but it can help in establishing it. And so that was why Adele worked so hard to get this out as quickly as she could, was because now we have a place to start the conversations from. And at the end of the day, this organization is now going to be that umbrella, that protective environment where you now do have a huge community of practitioners that all agree that this is the way to, this is a correct intervention in many instances. And so therefore that agreement is standard of care. And suddenly the people who were afraid of that, maybe believed it, but were afraid of taking it to their patients because it's not considered standard of care. Now that's all changing. The practitioners are going to actually feel like they're protected, which I think is awesome.
So Doug, for people who are interested, how do they find you? I know we could put links in the show notes, but how's the best way for practitioners, docs out there who want to understand more?
So, I mean, we're going to start, this is basically going to air as we launch. So it's pretty new. So if you go and search on Google or something, you might not find a whole lot yet. But so the best way is to look for the MHSP, Metabolic Health, MHP, Metabolic Society, SMHP, goodness me, I should remember that, right? So the SMHP, or go to metabolicpractitioners.org.
I'm going to it right now, metabolic practitioners.
Okay, so right now, it just has a form on there for people to fill in to actually learn more about it and get information as we're about to launch it. I sent you two guys the development platform that we're working on, a link to that. And I can resend that to you, and you can have a look at how the website's coming along. We're hoping through this weekend to be testing by the end of the weekend that a worst case fix a few things on Monday. And then we'll be ready to take it to a few friendlies to go live, but to a few friendlies who can help us kick the tires, make sure there's no glaring errors and bugs and stuff. And then, I keep saying it's coming soon, but I'm really convinced that by sometime next week, we will be able to push this live. So,
I mean, this is going to be great. It's metabolicpractitioners.org, and it's the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. It's a not-for-profit that is basically whose focus, and certainly I'm a part of it, and Brian will be a part of it, and Dr. Eric Westman and Dr. Cucuzzella and so many more, and Adele Height and all these people. We are creating a way for healthcare practitioners to become educated, support this space, and creating a defined certification process so that you can say, You know, I know the standard of care and I practice the standard of care. I'm educated on the standard of care. And there's so many avenues that this is going to grow. And Doug Reynolds, thank you for everything that you do. Absolutely, I'm excited about this. The Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Doug,